I want to ask you today, do you have faith in yourself? Do you have faith in all that you're doing in your life every single day, what you're creating on a daily basis, the interactions that you have with other people? And do you believe that you're constantly guided and supported no matter what? Today's conversation on the Happiness Happens podcast is with Jon Beebe, who is an incredible human being that I met through a mastermind group that I'm a part of. And Jon and I have had so many different conversations about faith and God and family and how it shows up in our lives every single day. And so I wanted to bring him on the Happiness Happens podcast to share a little bit of a different perspective on what it looks like to be guided by faith and how we can find that more in our day-to-day lives, especially when we start to question the guidance that we're receiving. So let me share a little bit about Jon with you before we get into our conversation. He's a devoted husband, a proud girl dad of 3 girls, and a man of faith. He's a passionate entrepreneur with a mission to live and work in a way that allows him to engage more with those he loves and the things he loves. He's the CEO of Beebe's Bargains and Beebe Travel, and he excels in community building. He absolutely does. I cannot even tell you what he has created. It's incredible. Jon's coaching venture, Beebe's Coaching, empowers aspiring entrepreneurs to achieve their goals. Jon has a genuine zest for life and business, and I know you're going to love him as much as I do. Let's get into it. Jon, thank you so much for joining me on the Happiness Happens podcast today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'll just tell you, I am so happy to be here, pun intended. Thanks for having me, Simona.
You're so welcome. Isn't it fun that we're on the Happiness Happens podcast and we're both very happy to be here?
It is very fun. You can tell if you're watching us, you can see our smiles. We are very happy.
Exactly. And if you're not watching and you're listening, I hope you can hear our smiles in the words that we are speaking. So yes, in any case, very excited to have you here. Thank you for your time. I will start out. My listeners know that the very first question that I like to ask when I'm starting out this podcast is, what does happiness mean to you?
Well, I'm a fan of the podcast too, so I listen. So I knew this was
you.
coming.
Thank you.
That being said, I have like a long answer, short answer. I'm just going to try to be as concise as possible.
I want your answer from your heart. Whatever,
from
long,
my
short.
heart.
Yeah, whatever, long, short, doesn't matter.
Perfect. Here it comes. Well, through my life, I've always looked at kind of happiness and joy and always tried to say, what's the difference? Some people say there is a difference. Some people say there's not a difference. So happiness is kind of a little different phrase for me. So that being said, first of all, you know me a little bit, Simona. So I get happy when I get like a happiness. What does happiness mean to me? It's like a bag of Twizzlers, big bag of gummy bears, the Buffalo Bills winning a football game, me going to Disney World with my family. But like, those are like things. But now let me get a little deeper with it and talk about like, what does happiness mean to me? I was a pastor for 14 years. And being a pastor, I used to tell people that happiness is rooted in happenings. So things that happen to you, where joy is rooted in like something deeper that's more unchanging. And like for what I was doing as a pastor, for me, is rooted in Jesus. For you, it could be something else, but it was something deeper, something unchanging. We might even say something eternal. It was something bigger than that. And I also believe that joy and happiness have the same thing, same feelings, but it's where does that happiness, that joy, that feeling come from? So, now as I study it a little more and I look into it, I also believe another way to look at joy and happiness is that happiness happens more when we focus on ourselves. And while I think it's important to at times, but where joy happens when we focus on others, it's more others focused and we get this. And I feel like when we, you could say you get a gift, you get excited, you get happy. But when you give a gift, there's more joy in that. It's almost longer lasting when you get a gift or when you give a gift than when you get one. So that's kind of what I would say right there. And a quote I love is by P.T. Barnum. And a little fun fact, I'm related to P.T. Barnum.
What?
If you didn't know that. Yes, I am. I'm going to tell you how I'm related. So be ready. You might need to write this down. P.T. Barnum was my 9th great-grandfather's great-great-great-grandson. And that's on my mother's side. My great-grandmother's name, her last name was Barnum. So
wow. How did you figure that out?
I knew her name was Barnum, and I just started studying on Ancestry.com. And the quote I wanted to say about him to bring that up was, the noblest art is that of making others happy. And I just love that. I love the idea of making others happy. And maybe you can say that is there's joy in making others happy, like that noble art of doing that. So that's
Mm.
a little bit about happiness for me. I love getting things and receiving gifts, and that's happiness to me. But I love getting that feeling of happiness more when it's found in joy, when I'm helping, serving others, because it tends to last longer.
Ooh, okay. So much to dissect in here. And I will throw this out right off the bat. Okay. So I've been having a lot of different conversations lately about spirituality, about religion, all the things. Okay. And a lot of the people I've been talking to have this internal joy, internal happiness, and this internal peace. That's how I define happiness, is by
Yep,
internal peace.
I love it.
But they have right, they have this internal happiness, they have this internal joy, this internal peace by serving others. And it doesn't really matter what's going on in your life, what kind of chaos is going on in your life, that you stay rooted in your own purpose by providing for somebody else. And it was such a foreign concept to me, Jon, when I was first seeing this in practice, because I was like, you have so much going on in your life, and there are so many different things, so many different pieces in your life that could make anyone fall apart and just be done.
Yep.
Yet you're showing up and giving it so much love and pouring into other people so deeply that you continue to have a full cup by pouring into others. It is the most beautiful surprise, I think, that I've learned over this last year.
It is. And it's super encouraging. I mean, I look at, even like maybe think about back to like Mother Teresa's life. She was
Mm,
less about trying to get accolades for herself. And to be honest, she probably wouldn't even want to be famous. But when you look at her
yeah.
life, she was living in third world countries, caring for people, pouring out to people, giving to people. And I'll just tell you, if I was able to sit down with her, I'll probably say she had the most joy filled, happiest life you could ever have. And I don't know if she ever stepped foot in a place like Disney World or got a bag of Twizzlers or any of that kind of stuff that would me happy, but yet her life was full of that everlasting happiness, that joy.
I love that. I think it takes some of the drama out of all of the things that we go through on a day to day. Because, okay, so this is for my listeners. So, on my production side of my business,
Yep.
I produce podcasts, and one of my clients had you on her podcast also through a different lens, different topics. I was editing this episode, and essentially, what really just kept ringing true for me when you were speaking was how important it is to build up community. And community you can look at in so many different ways. I mean, you can look at it from a business perspective. Obviously, I want you to talk about a little bit about what you do and about your business, because I think it ties so deeply into your past and also how you continue to show up for people. And I will say, I'll caveat kind of here. People ask me all the time, like, how do you find so much success in business? And I don't think it has anything to do with anything other than the fact of deeply caring for other people.
Yep. And mentality of serve first. A guy I listen to, Pat Flynn, he always says that serve first.
Mm-hmm.
Serve other people first and success will follow. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
say, what does success look like for you?
Yeah.
And success is more when you're serving others and caring for others and helping them. And that's really what life is about. And even my life mission, if you don't have a life mission, if you're out there listening, write it, because most of us have business missions, but we
Mm.
don't have life missions. And a lot of our business missions, we don't even live out. We just kind of like write them down. They sound cool. They go on a wall and it's like, great, that's awesome, but we don't live it out. I mean, I think that's starting to become less true today, that people are actually starting to live those out. But like 30 years ago, they would just be on a wall and no one would ever do anything with them. They'd write them and that
Right.
was it, because you
Right.
had to have one. But not many of us write a life mission. And like when I think of my life mission, actually my life mission came out of my business mission, which is ironic. I should have did the latter first. But my life mission is I want to live and work in a way that allows me to engage more with those I love and the things I love. And
Mm.
the word engage is important there, because it's not just hang out, it's not just do what I want to do. It's engage. It involves doing something, going to a deeper level with those people that I love, that I care about, that I can be in their life. And the decisions I make in my life, and then the things I love. There are times, I was talking about recently this past week, I was in my mastermind and we were talking about what do we do for self-care? And a lot
Mm.
of times for self-care, people say I'm a very extroverted person, but I think introvert and extrovert get really misdefined,
Convoluted.
because it
Yeah.
really just means where you get refilled from. And I am an outgoing person, but I'm an outgoing introvert. I get refilled, I get self-care, self-love from when I spend time by myself to refuel. So
Mm.
like there are times where I need to go do stuff by myself. I actually took a 1 day trip to Disney World last week by myself. Literally, I woke up in PA, went to Disney World, did all 4 parks, 13 different attractions. You can actually watch it if you look at my Instagram. You can see the pinned story there. And came home and was in bed in PA the same night.
Oh my
So that being said, I did that. I did that a little bit for work because I help people plan travel trips and stuff.
yeah.
But I also did that because I like doing things by myself. So there are times you have to do some things by yourself for self-care. So that's when I look at my life. I want to work and live in a way that allows me to engage more with those I love and the things I love. So
Mm.
while I'm doing that, I'm filling myself up. I'm engaging with those I love. I'm caring for them. The decisions in my life, in my business, all filter through that. Is this going to take me away from those I love and the things I love, or is this going to bring me towards them? And when you're thinking of work, you can even work in a way that allows you to engage more with those you love and the things you love. So really, I try to take that and I make that all encompassing in my whole life. And that engage really to me means being with them, caring for them, having fun with them, bringing them life too, like
Mm.
like that PT Barnum quote, there's no noble art than that of making others happy. Like that's part of engaging with them. I love lifting people up and making them happy because at the end of the day, I think I've heard that for every 7 negative things we hear one positive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to be the opposite of that. I don't want people to hear much negative out of me at all if I can help it. I
I
mean, I'm
love
human, so I
that.
can't help it, but I try.
Of course. And I think that there's like a difference between like constantly being negative all the time and then going through a really tough patch and talking it out with a friend. You know what I mean? Like those are two like
Exactly.
very, very different things. Like if you're choosing gossip, if you're choosing negativity, if you're choosing to bring other people down, that is a choice. Whereas if something is happening, a circumstance is happening in your life and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I navigate this? It's
Yes.
totally fine to like lean on someone and yeah, you might bring a little bit of negativity, but that negativity transmutes into a positive.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I went through extreme emotional, psychological abuse when I was a kid growing up,
Mm.
and I used to think if I talk about that, I'm gossiping and I'm
Mm.
I'm I'm wrong.
Mhm.
And I would hold it all in because I didn't want to gossip about those people that maybe inflicted that on me. And maybe
Mhm.
they had the best intentions and they just got things they need to work out. So, I don't hold any bitterness or hate or anger towards them. But at the end of the day, too, I still had to remove myself from certain relationships in that. But
Mhm.
what I've realized is that it's not gossip to talk about your truth
Mm.
because I went through that and that was my truth. Now, if I'm
Mhm.
talking about my truth and I'm saying, F them, I never want to see them again, and I'm getting
Yeah.
all worked up and heated and all this stuff, that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the unhealthy way. But if I'm talking about it saying, hey, this is what I went through, and then the person I'm talking to, again, we know there's people we can go to that'll tell us what we need or what we want to hear. We need to go to the people that will tell us what we need to hear. Like I always say,
Mhm.
a true friend, when I was a pastor, I'd say I have a lot of one liners. I would say, true friend will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And if we're going to the people that are telling us what we want to hear, chances are we're going to gossip to them. But if we're
Mhm.
going to that friend that we know is going to tell us what we need to hear, it's not going to be gossip. It's going to be our truth and it's going to help work us through it. Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, I believe like bad things are going to happen to us all the time. And I always say, you say happiness happens, and happiness is rooted in happenings. Like when good things happen to us, when bad things happen to us, we're a little less happy. So we
Mhm.
want more good things to happen to us, but they don't always. So that's where I say where joy comes, it's almost like a choice. Like about I forgot how many years ago it was, but I was listening to a podcast once. I love podcasts. I think you said on one of your more recent episodes, a couple back, how you don't read a lot of books. You read like 10 pages, and then a year later you pick it up and you read
Yeah.
10 pages. I'm a little bit like that too. I'm finishing a book from a couple of years ago that I love, and it's taken me 2 years yet, but I do the same thing. But when I was listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, I remember a guy saying he hasn't had a bad day in like 20 years.
Wow.
And he realized that having a good or bad day is based on a choice.
Hmm.
It's you choosing. It's how you look at it. It's at the end of the day, you choosing to say, what am I grateful for? What are the good things that happened? Like, yeah, 2020 was a bad year, but no, it wasn't. There was a lot of good things that came out of it. It's not making the bad things or the hard things we go through less weighty. It's saying, no,
Mhm.
they're weighty, but I made it through them. And I'm choosing at
Mhm.
the end of the day to say there was great things that happened today.
Mhm.
So how can I, focus on those? And at the end of the day, say today was a good day in the midst of bad things happening.
Mhm. That's a really hard thing for people to do because and I am someone who skews this way also, similar to you. I tend to look at my life, when I was younger and growing up, my family would make fun of me, like, you look at life through rose colored glasses. That's not how life actually is. And I beg to differ, because I actually think it can be. And not by dismissing or being ignorant to all of the things that are going on around you, but choosing to see a positive in a really, really negative situation. And so, I've been going through this situation in my life over the last year or so. And the only thing that keeps me going every day, one foot in front of the other, is choosing the energy in which I want to show up in, and choosing which story I'm giving power to. And that's not to say that I haven't had days where it's like, I feel like my life is devastatingly over.
Yep.
And those moments don't last as quickly as they used to. And I think one thing, you were talking about the emotional abuse side early, like a little bit earlier, and I kept thinking to myself, a lot of the times you don't realize that you're in that type of environment. You don't realize that you're in that type of scenario. So what I've learned is, what happens is, when you have that awareness, when you develop that awareness, then you're able to identify different patterns and you're able to see different things. But then where it gets confusing is the story in your mind is telling you something different about X, Y, and Z person. And also, when you're someone like yourself, like myself, who is deeply empathetic and deeply caring of other people, it's hard to focus on the bad, because it's like, but people would never actually do that. Why would someone actually do that? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so it frames this story and it creates this like polarity within yourself and this like complex thing to navigate, because it's like, this truth is true, but this truth is also true. And so
Yes.
what's in the middle of that, And then that's like the detangling part of your life. That is literally detangling your entire life, and all the stories that you're told and the things that you believe to be true. But then when you're rooted in something strong, and I actually, this is something I want to share with you, because I think you're gonna be really happy about this. We didn't get to talk about this when we were in person last time, but so John and I are in the same mastermind group, just so everybody knows. And the first time we met, we were in Florida for that
Near
weekend,
Disney World.
near Disney World, which is like the happiest place on earth. And so we were in Disney, and we were at this mastermind retreat weekend, and it was absolutely amazing. And what I've realized about myself over the last few years, so I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic,
Hmm.
like that's my faith. That's how I grew up. And over the years, society tells you that that's not good. Society tells you that religion is this, that, whatever. Society tells you that faith is X, Y, and Z, or it should only look like this, or it can't look like this, or if you believe in this, that means you're this. Like all these stories that people create. So when you're younger and you're a teenager and you're going through all of these different changes in your life, you start to internalize these stories, and you're like, hold on. So like, what's true for me here? Like, okay, but you don't really have the awareness of knowing what is true for you when you're like 15. You're kind of like, okay, well, everyone says this thing is bad, so
Yep.
it's not good. Okay, so then we get rid of that. We remove that from life. But what happens when you do something like that is you take away having faith in something greater than yourself. And
Hmm.
let me tell you from experience, navigating and going through life with having no faith in yourself or in whatever it is that you're creating is really hard, because you can find inner confidence, you can tap into inner potential, but when you're not rooted in something bigger than, it's very hard to continue going all the time. So all this to say, I feel like I have literally been on a soapbox for like way too many minutes, because I want to hear your opinion. And when we met in person and you started telling me about your faith and your experience as a youth pastor and all of these different little things, like little breadcrumbs that we talked about over that weekend, I started thinking to myself, like, maybe this isn't all bad. You know what I mean? Like maybe religion is not a bad thing. And like maybe having faith in something bigger than is not a bad thing. And maybe listening to, you know, like how to even like maybe not listening, but like reading scripture and like listening to anything related to, like, maybe those things are not necessarily bad. And then the more that I kind of took it back and I like went home and I was like, okay, I was like, hold on. And it was something that I needed in that moment to understand why the hard moments are happening in my life the way they are. And also, it gives me the courage to not just fall apart all the time.
Mm.
And it's so powerful. And so now I'm sitting in this spot where all of these people are coming into my life who are who have really strong faith, really strong beliefs. I actually have shivers, I have chills. And it's beautiful because it gives you this extra permission slip. And then, like, I'll tell you a side note story right before I stopped talking. My Nana was over this weekend, and she said to me, I really would love if you would just come to church with us. And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. And she's like, and there's a support group for X, Y, and Z that I think you should check out. And I was like, wow, I was like, the timing literally works perfectly. Like, yeah, I'll go. Because it's kind of,
Yeah.
I'm in this like exploratory phase again of like, why not? You
Yeah.
know? Okay,
I
I'll stop talking.
You're okay. I love what you're saying. You said so much there.
I know.
All right. So then, speaking, Simona, about like God and religion and stuff like that, you mentioned is I actually am not a big fan of religion, and
Hmm.
let me define that for you. I think religion is all what people do to get to God. It's all these rituals, these things you have to do. It's almost becomes like legalistic. It's like you have to do A, B, and C, or else God's not happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're out there, you don't believe in God. I'm not trying to force God on anybody. So just
No.
know that. But I think more importantly is relationship is what I like,
Mm.
because I believe, and this is for me. It doesn't have to be for everybody, but I believe in Jesus. And what did Jesus do? He claimed to be God. He came down to earth to be with us, to live in the muck, to go through the crappiness of life, to cry with us, to walk with us, like, and to form a relationship. You think of like the 12 guys that hung out with him, and then there was multiple women that hung out with him. Like, he had these really close followers, and he was all about relationship versus religion. And the religious people of his day disliked him. And I'll tell you this, I believe today, if Jesus came like he did then and he walked on earth now instead of then, I believe most churches, most church people, whether they be Catholic, Baptist, non denominational, whatever you want to put in there, I believe they wouldn't be a fan of Jesus,
Hmm.
because Jesus flipped everything upside down. He hung with the people you shouldn't hang with. The people that were attracted to him were not the quote unquote church people.
Hmm.
The people that were attracted to Jesus were the people that the church doesn't attract today. And I'm not saying every church, I'm not saying everyone out there is like this, but I'm saying what I've noticed. If
Mm-hmm.
you go out in the streets today and you ask people, what do you think of Jesus? They'll have great things to say about him. You ask them, what do they think of Christianity? It's going to be mostly negative when you're
Yeah.
asking people.
Yeah.
So that being said, the relationship part of it is super important to me. And what I found is that, like, Jesus loves us. He forgives us. Like, he does that. He's not looking to control us. He's looking to give us life. This is what he says. He says, I've come to give life and to give it to you to the full. Think about a full life. Like, that's a happy filled, that's a joy filled life that I want. That's everything he was about. And he didn't say, I come to give it to you and give it to you the full for only those people that like me or that want to believe in me. Like, he came and he said, no, I want everybody to experience that. Like, that was his like mission, was to give people life to the full. And it's like, that's what I want to be about. I want to help people experience life, whether they like me or not. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna care for them. I'm gonna help them. I'm gonna, guide them and, do good things for them. And that's really what it's about. But I think, Simona, for you, I would say, one, I think that's awesome. I don't have any grandparents that are living anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
my wife has one grandfather. We call him Opa,
Oh.
great guy. And, but if my grandma was alive today or my grandpa was alive today and they were like, I'd love for you to, come to church with me. And I could tell you have a good relationship with your grandma. I'd be like,
Yeah.
yo, I'm going. I don't know if I believe all that, but I'm just going to go because I want to be with you.
I'm going for you,
Like,
Nana.
how cool is that? Because she's not asking with any ill intentions. I mean, if she's trying to
No.
manipulate you and change you and stuff like that, like, that's one thing, but she's not asking with any ill intentions. And you're going to go do that with her. And guess what? Your relationship with her is going to grow. And who
Mm-hmm.
knows? God, the creator, whatever you want to call him, may open something up amazing to you that you're like, I needed that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because you made that decision. And
Mm-hmm.
grandma played in part that. She would play a part in
Exactly.
that, which is awesome.
And too, I was thinking that when you go through hard times in life, and like I'm very particular and careful about like what I say in specific. Like I've talked a tiny bit, like in one episode, and I'm careful about what I talk about because I don't really like to share a whole lot about my personal, like my deep personal
Yep.
life online, because you have to, like, there's some things I feel like you need to protect in life, because there's always two sides to every story, and like it's not, it is, I will caveat that it's not that bad. Like it is not that bad to the point where, like, but I'm just trying to be respectful of everyone who's involved.
Yes.
And I think that when people go through hard times in life, your family, hopefully, not always, but your family, some of them, friends too, everyone
Chosen
supports
family.
you, chosen family. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just support you in the best way that they know how.
Hmm.
And if that's the way that she shows love, and if that's the way that she can help me and support me through this time, why would I say no? You know what I mean? Again, we go back to choice. Like all of these things are choices. And
Yep.
when you're waking up every single day, like you can choose to not expand your heart or you can choose to expand your heart. It's a choice.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Ugh.
I love that. It's beautiful.
Oh, I love this so much. Okay, I could talk to you for hours because we could. I will ask you this is my last question that I like to ask all of my guests when they come on the show. It's a question I've been asking for 3 years now of this podcast, more than 3 years. And it is, what can someone do in their day, every day, starting today, to create a little more happiness in their life?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I love when people say it's a great question. 'Cause what they're doing is they're actually trying to figure out how to answer that
That's
question.
right. And then they talk about
So,
answering the question so that they
so
can
just a
find
little
more
secret.
time.
Whenever somebody says on a podcast, that's a great question, they're not really complicating the question as much as they are
They're
trying to
like,
figure
oh,
out
I
what
need
their
two
answer will
seconds.
be. So what can people do? I honestly think perfection or perception, the way you perceive, the way you look at the world is super important. What you're letting into your life. Like I have family members that are on, or I have friends and family members that are on both sides of the political spectrum. And they could be watching one side or the other side, the really strong news. And what I found is the ones that focus on the really hard right or the really hard left, and they want to just criticize everybody and talk about how the world is horrible, they're not as happy of people.
Hmm,
They're not as joy filled people because it's what you're letting into your life. What you let into your life comes out of your life.
that's right.
Like they say, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're hanging around with negative, unhappy, miserable people, guess what you're going to be? Negative, unhappy, miserable people. I purposely choose, if there's negative, unhappy, miserable people, complainers, I choose to hold them at a distance. I don't let them into my inner circle.
Hmm,
I choose to hold them at a distance. Do I not care for them? Do I not love them depending on who they are? I do. I do. But I got to understand that I can't let that corrupt what's inside of me. So
right.
it's perception. How do you look at the world? How do you perceive it? Are you focusing on the negatives? Are you focusing on the positives? Now, when I say focusing, I don't mean acting like nothing bad ever happens. Bad stuff happens every single day. I mean, people ask, why do bad things happen to good people and why do good things happen to bad people? I don't know all those answers. It's just the way of life. We live in an imperfect world. Bad things just happen. But it's how we perceive them, how we look at them, and how we push past them, and it's perspective we get. If you're in a hole, if you're in a hole and you focus on all the dirt around you, guess what's going to happen? Life is going to suck.
Mm-hmm,
You're never going to get out of that hole.
mm-hmm,
But if you're in a hole and you look up and you see the beautiful sky and you see the birds flying over you and you see the sunset, the sunrise, you see the good stuff up there, you're not looking at the dirt anymore. You're looking up. You're seeing the beautifulness. So you're changing your perspective. You didn't change where you're still standing in the same place. It's just where you're looking. So you look towards that. And yes, you got to acknowledge all that stuff's there. But when you see the difference, when you look up to the sky and you see all the good stuff, you're like, okay, all this dirt's here. I acknowledge that, but I got to figure out how I'm going to get there. And then you start figuring out solutions rather than how to stay down where you are. So I would say work on your perspective every day. How are you looking at life? What are you looking at? And then I would also say, be careful what you're letting into your mind. Are you letting negativity in your mind? I would say right now there's probably podcasts, not Simona's, of course, but there's podcasts or news stations, news
mm-hmm,
outlets, there's social media sites you need to stop following because all they're doing is pushing negativity to you. All they're
mm-hmm,
doing is pushing hate for somebody
mm-hmm.
else, for whatever. And if you turn that off, you will naturally be more happy. You
Yeah,
will be more joy filled.
yeah.
Negativity's out there. If you let it in, it's just going to permeate you like anything. Negativity spreads like a virus, and we all know how viruses spread, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. So
Mm-hmm.
negativity will spread just like that. But let's let joy, let's let happiness spread, because that's what we should be doing. And I'll tell you, you'll attract people that are happy and joy filled. If you're negative, you'll attract those people too. So hopefully that helps
Beautiful.
a little bit.
That's beautiful. Well, I know for one that my heart is so full right now. I feel like my cup is like so filled up right now. I love this conversation, Jon. Thank you. And I want to ask you if you could just share with our listeners where to find you. How can they connect with you?
So if you looked at the link tree in the bio, or in my bio, I assume Simona's going to put that down below someplace, or
You
to the side,
betcha.
wherever it would be.
To the
It'll be
side
there.
or
So
below.
click on the link tree. I love Linktree because if I update things, it'll just always update on there. If I can, I could say, my wife and I, I didn't say this yet, but I have a beautiful wife, Lauren. I have
Mm-hmm.
three beautiful daughters, Ava, Juliana, and London. So I am full of ladies here. And you might have heard little bells in the background as we're talking, Simona or whatever, but my cats decided to just be crazy. We have two boy cats and they're brothers.
We
So they're
love them.
next to me over here to my left, and they're just playing and jumping through their stuff. They don't always do this. They usually lay and sleep, but I guess they realize I need quietness now, so they're doing this. There was a noise now. So,
Of course. Can I
anyways,
tell you a side note thing of that
yes,
real quick? So I had a cat growing up. She was a black cat with gold eyes. Okay, her name was Bianca because that's the only name I knew when I was 3. She
that's
lived
great.
until I was 20, so she 23 when we put her down. She lived for 20 years. Okay,
Wow.
and I know. And when I put her down, I took her collar and I have it in the dash of my car as a reminder. Like I loved
Aw.
that cat. She was like my best friend. And so I get specific signs from the universe, and collar bells are one of them. And it happens in
Wow.
it happens in moments of reconfirmation, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's been
So
happening this whole episode next to me. So
I know.
maybe
So
that's
maybe
Bianca saying hey to us. So,
just
little
anyways.
quick thing. A lot of people would ask me as a pastor, do animals go to heaven? There's nothing that says they don't.
Oh, okay.
So, a lot of people like they don't have a soul, so they don't go there.
No, they
Just a
have a
little food
soul.
just a little food for thought. I don't know if they have a soul or not. That's not really I'm not really
Fair
going to
enough.
worry
Fair
about
enough.
that. But heaven, the Bible talks about all kinds of animals in heaven. It never says they don't. And there's a movie out there very specific, and it's really like deep theological. It's called All Dogs Go to Heaven. So I mean
Oh,
that just proves it. So
oh,
so
I
that
can't
being
handle
said
that.
as well, my wife Lauren and I are three daughters, two cats, and my wife and I, as you say in your intro, you say would you say I abandoned, or I dropped out of the corporate world? So I
Yes.
dropped out of the corporate world as well to help my wife run a business. When I say corporate world, I mean a pastor. Not trying to say, not trying to to devalue that role
No,
for people
no.
that our pastors, but it was very corporate the way we function. So I dropped out of that to help my wife lead our business. We run a business called Beebe's Bargains, where we serve people by helping them find the best online deals, so that way they can
Mm,
engage more with those they love and the things they love. And then we help people with travel. I also do coaching and things like that, but it's all about service. So if you're
okay.
out there, you want to connect with me, even want to like shoot me an email, you'll hear from me. You won't hear from a bot or anything like that. You'll hear from me because I'm very focused on community building and things like that. Bots are great. They help us with a lot of things, but when it comes to building community, it needs to be people running that. But Simona, this was a pleasure. This brought joy to my day, happiness to my day. And with all the stuff you're going through, Simona, all the stuff you've went through in your life and you continue to, I just know you have a great future. And for those of you listening, where you might look at Simona and be like, man, is she really the person she says she is? I'll just say she is. I've spent time with her outside of here. So if you're wondering, is she the same person on the podcast as she is in person? She is. She's probably better in person. She is a super caring, compassionate person. And I've even seen her in the last year be vulnerable with certain parts of her life. And
Mm,
it's been encouraging to see her working on them and pushing forward. And she is a great, great person. So if you're out there, make sure you keep listening to her, keep supporting her. I'm a big fan of Simona, and I know those listening are too.
thank you. I'm a big fan of Jon and I receive all of that. So that was beautiful. Thank you so much. I
Good. You are
appreciate
welcome.
you so much for being here. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you are very welcome, Simona. Thanks for having me here. Everybody have a great day and choose joy and happiness.
I love that. And I have to close out with my favorite line. It's a line I've been saying for so many years. It's thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode. Remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.